Well, thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister Remy Shova, distinguished guest. It really is an honor to address you at this international Congress, and I understand also Slovakia's leading tech event. Now, governments have been seriously challenged, of course, by the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, and the bold and decisive responses by governments have been crucial in supporting businesses and households, and also in saving lives and livelihoods. And so has actually the digital economy, which we're going to talk about today. Economic growth does continue to pick up, and the economic outlook continues to improve, albeit with many uncertainties. But still, I think it's worth noting that since the middle of 2020, so for the past 16 months, we've been consistently upgrading our GDP projections with global growth, and now expected to reach 5.7% this year and 4.5% in 2022. Extensive policy support combined with the rapid development of effective vaccines and combined with the accelerating digital transformation of our economies all contributed to this more optimistic outlook. And of course, the contribution of the digital transformation is absolutely key here, because the COVID-19 crisis marks a turning point for the digital economy. It has accelerated the digital transformation from e-commerce and digital government to telehealth and telework. For example, in France and the UK, almost half of all workers worked from home during the first lockdown. It's quite clear that digitalization has been a source of resilience, but as Slovakia and other OECD economies become more dependent on digital technologies, we need to ensure that policies and governance frameworks for the digital age are really up to the task. As we navigate through the complexity of the COVID-19 pandemic, it's becoming more evident that the challenges of our time require us really to rethink the role of digital governments. After years of what we call going digital, the pandemic has forced governments now to act what I would call fully digital. Governments are now expected to be ahead of the curve and ensure that societies and economies can leverage the benefits of the digital age, while of course at the same time balancing the opportunities and risks. We have seen an extraordinary leap in the adoption of e-commerce, remote working and distance learning. International open data sharing platforms and machine learning techniques also helped address the pandemic. But the pandemic also exacerbated fragilities in our digital ecosystems. They exposed digital divides across countries, across regions, firms, genders, and social groups. The vulnerability of our digital security and the challenges to human and democratic values have been exposed also by the increasing application of technologies such as AI. So to optimize the quality of the digital transformation of our economies, we need good policy and we need multilateral solutions to key challenges. Policy attention needs to focus on ensuring appropriate and equitable access to the necessary digital infrastructure, on investing in the necessary skills development, on planning for the future of work, and on effectively addressing competition issues. It also needs to focus on cybersecurity, privacy, data flow with free trust, and also tax policy implications, as well, of course, as setting values-based standards. One example is the use of artificial intelligence. All this just to name a few. We need to foster public sectors that strategically embed innovation and foresight at the heart of all policymaking. This commitment is at the very core of the so-called OECD Declaration on Public Sector Innovation, adopted by 43 countries to date. Additionally, there's also the OECD recommendation on digital government strategies. It has guided countries on how to take advantage of digital tools. Last month, the OECD Council at ministerial level, our annual ministerial meeting, adopted the recommendation of the Council on enhanced access to and sharing of data. This is actually the first international instrument providing policy guidance for governments to maximize the cross-sectoral benefits of all types of data, be they personal, non-personal, open, proprietary, public or private, while at the same time protecting individuals' and organizations' rights. We look forward to using this instrument to support whole-of-government efforts to establish coherent data governance policies and frameworks. The OECD is also advancing work on multiple fronts with the global fora such as G7 and G20 to support this agenda. That includes work in several areas of our work. And I'll just mention a few. Secure, resilient ICT supply chains and networks, data-free flow with trust, children in the digital environment, the digital gender divide, and transparency reporting on terrorist and violent extremist content online. For example, in August, under the leadership of Italy, the G20 digital ministers recognized how the provision of shared and compatible solutions such as trusted digital identity can enable governments to better serve citizens. And in exceptional circumstances, actually also does empower people with the means to fully benefit from the digital age in a trustworthy manner. We need to go one step further now, so that digital identity solutions enable citizens to access the services they need wherever and whenever. The OECD looks forward to continue supporting the international dialogue on digital identity as a core 21st century service for mature digital government. We're also advancing a broader technology governance agenda, and as we've done with our OECD principles on artificial intelligence and our recommendation on responsible innovation in neurotechnology. Last month, as I think you all know, members of the OECD G20 Inclusive Framework on BEPS, that's what it's called, reached an agreement to significantly reform our international tax arrangements to make them fairer and work better in an increasingly digitalized and globalized world economy. These reforms will also provide businesses with more certainty and hopefully contribute to reduce trade tensions. We're now focused on its implementation and ensuring that all countries and jurisdictions meet the ambitious deadlines. So to conclude, we need effective digital governments capable of planning and prioritizing the deployment of common and trustworthy digital tools across the global sector, across the public sector. We need this in order to make the digital transformation sustainable and in order to make our institutions more resilient for the future. Conferences like this one in Slovakia today will also allow us to take stock and reflect on how to move forward and strengthen the role of digital government to meet the needs of the 21st century. I am absolutely confident that the discussions in this conference will help to move the discussion forward on cutting-edge governance practices in Europe. And these are practices that governments are exploring to better prepare for and better shape our common future. So I wish you all an excellent discussion, and thank you very much again for having me.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Knudsen, for your words. And if I may, one question, maybe a little bit more personal. Then in OECD, you and your teams, how do you manage to keep these positive discussions and to keep this positive mood? So let's ask you for give us some insight, also maybe some inspiration for us, how in this difficult time still to keep the positive mood, to keep the motivation and find maybe new solutions, maybe out of the box.
You know, I think the COVID-19 pandemic has shown us what the digital transformation can really do to help us. I sometimes ask in audiences like this, I ask them to imagine what would have happened if the COVID-19 pandemic had struck us 30 years ago. Imagine throwing us back to, say, November 1991, and we'd had a pandemic of this magnitude. We would not have had internet almost. We would not have had anything such as teleworking, telecommerce, e-commerce. It would not have been able to teach our children through distant learning. In essence, we would have had to accept either a much, much higher death toll, or if we couldn't have accepted that, we would have to have accepted a total standstill of our economies. But because of the digital transformation, we have been able at least to keep the economies going and bring the death toll down to, it's never acceptable, but down to numbers that are manageable. This is not the plague of 100 years ago, just to make a comparison from before the digital revolution. So I think this is a motivation. I think we need the digital transformation to solve many problems of the future. If we are to have the productivities to sustain the demographic evolution of our societies, we need the digital transformation to help us. Also to get growth, we need the digital transformation and contributions from that also, I think, to solve the biggest challenge of our time. A little bit northwest of us in Glasgow, they're discussing the climate change challenges right now, and I don't think that we're gonna succeed as mankind in that if we don't have major contributions from technology and the digital transformation. So this is part of what is driving us at the OECD. The Going Digital project is our biggest horizontal project, and as I mentioned, we're working on lots of different recommendations to help governments both within and outside the OECD. So I remain an optimist that the digital transformation has a lot to offer us in order to solve the challenges of the 21st century.
Thank you very much. Well, it's maybe hard to see because we are wearing masks, but I see people are smiling with the eyes. So thank you very much for your inspiration, and good luck to all activities that you have. Thank you for your words, and we will continue with our program for today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.